In the quiet town of Kingston, New York, I had no idea that the day I had been eagerly anticipating for months would become the most humiliating day of my life. I had always been a devoted grandmother. Emily, my 7-year-old granddaughter, was the light of my life. Her birthday was a big deal for me, and I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. I had spent hours picking out the perfect gift, an antique jewelry box I knew she would cherish, and I had spent days baking cupcakes and helping my daughter-in-law, Claire, with the party preparations. Claire and my son, Ethan, had recently moved into a beautiful new home, and the party was set to take place there. The sun was shining, the air crisp and clear, everything seemed perfect. My son Ethan had always been a kind-hearted man, and Claire, though distant at times, had never shown anything but politeness towards me. In fact, I thought we had a good relationship. But the moment I stepped through the door of their house, something felt off. It was like a shift in the atmosphere, something just beneath the surface. The house was filled with the sounds of children laughing, the hum of casual conversation, and the clinking of glasses as people mingled. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something wrong. I greeted Emily with a hug and a kiss, and she smiled up at me, her face lighting up with the excitement only a child could feel on her birthday. "Grandma, look," she said, holding up her new toy. I was in awe of how quickly she was growing up. I wanted to enjoy every minute of this day. But it wasn't long before I noticed Claire standing by the kitchen, watching me with a strange expression on her face. She was talking with a few of the other guests, but her eyes kept drifting over to me, a look of impatience crossing her features. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just feeling stressed. After all, hosting a birthday party was no easy task, especially when you had a new home and a family to manage. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself slipping into a familiar routine, chatting with relatives, watching Emily unwrap her presents, and helping Claire with the food. Everything seemed to be going well, but I couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched, scrutinized even. Claire's occasional cold glances made me uneasy, but I kept telling myself it was just my imagination. The turning point came after we finished cutting the cake. The children were running around the yard, playing games, and the adults had gathered in the living room to relax. I had just settled into a chair when Claire came up to me, her expression cold and hard. "Mom, can I speak to you for a minute?" she said, her tone clipped. I blinked in surprise. "Of course, Claire. Is everything all right?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced around the room, her eyes darting nervously, as if checking to make sure no one was listening. The tension in her body was palpable, and I instantly felt a wave of unease wash over me. I stood up, excusing myself from the conversation, and followed her out the back door into the garden. It was a quiet moment, the sounds of the party fading into the distance as the door closed behind us. Claire's posture was tense, her arms folded across her chest as she stood on the patio, looking at me with an unreadable expression. I could feel the chill in the air, but it wasn't just the weather, it was the shift in her energy, something dark and uncomfortable that I couldn't ignore. "Claire, what's going on?" I asked, my voice gentle but concerned. "Are you all right?" She stared at the ground for a moment, her jaw clenching. Then, she looked up at me, her eyes cold and sharp. "I'm done, Sarah. I want you to leave." I froze. "What? What do you mean?" "You need to leave. Now." I laughed nervously, thinking maybe she was joking. But there was no humor in her eyes, no hint of a smile. The seriousness in her voice hit me like a ton of bricks. "Claire, what's going on? Why would you ask me to leave?" She stepped closer, her face tight with frustration. "You've overstepped, Sarah. I've had enough of you interfering in my life and my home. Every time you come over, it's the same thing. You try to control everything, and I can't deal with it anymore." I felt a jolt of shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For years, I had bent over backward to be a supportive mother-in-law, to give Claire space and respect in her own home. Sure, we had our differences, but I had never felt like I was being anything but kind and helpful. And now, here she was, telling me to leave her house, on Emily's birthday, no less. You're not making sense, Claire, I said, my voice trembling slightly with the weight of what she was saying. This is Emily's birthday. You can't do this. But Claire was resolute. I don't care, Sarah. I want you gone. Now. The words stung. I tried to stay calm, but the wave of humiliation crashed over me. How could she do this to me? To Emily? I had done nothing but try to be a good mother-in-law and grandmother. Yet here I was, being thrown out of my son's house without explanation. Claire, this isn't the way to handle things. I've always tried to respect your space, I said, pleading now. Please, can we talk about this? Not today, please, not today of all days. But she wasn't listening. Her eyes were steely, her mind made up. It's too late, Sarah. I've had enough. I turned away, my heart sinking as the realization hit me. There was no reasoning with her. She had made up her mind, and it didn't matter that it was my granddaughter's birthday or that I had planned to make this day special for all of us. I walked to the car in a daze, the world around me muffled as I tried to process what had just happened. It felt as if everything I had built over the years, my relationship with my son, my role in their family, was crumbling in an instant. The humiliation I felt was overwhelming, but beneath it, there was something deeper, something that gnawed at me. What was truly going on here? The drive home was a blur, the events of the afternoon swirling in my mind like a storm that I couldn't escape. I couldn't help but replay the moments over and over in my head, trying to make sense of Claire's words. What had happened to the woman I once knew? As I pulled into my driveway, I could feel the weight of the afternoon settling heavily on my shoulders. It had been hours since I'd left my son's house, but the sting of Claire's words hadn't faded. How could she do that to me, especially today? I had never imagined that I would be the one kicked out on my granddaughter's birthday, of all days. I parked my car and sat for a moment, staring blankly at the steering wheel. The house I had lived in for so many years felt strangely empty now, as if the world outside had shifted, and I was left in a space that no longer felt like home. I didn't even want to go inside. My thoughts were too heavy, and I needed a moment to clear my head before facing the reality of what had just happened. I grabbed my phone and sent Ethan a message. I don't know what's going on with Claire, but I really hope we can talk soon. I'm confused and hurt. I hesitated for a second before hitting send, wondering if I was making the right move. But it was my son, and he deserved to know that something had gone terribly wrong. Still, I didn't expect him to reply immediately. After all, he was at the party and probably caught up in the mess too. After I sent the message, I decided to go inside, though I wasn't sure how to face the empty walls. I kicked off my shoes, trudged into the kitchen, and opened the fridge, searching for something to steady my nerves. I wasn't hungry, but I needed the distraction. As I grabbed a bottle of water, I glanced down at the kitchen table. There, lying among the bills and random papers, was an envelope I hadn't seen before. It was a cream-colored envelope, plain and unassuming, with my name written in neat, familiar handwriting, Sarah Palmer. My heart skipped a beat. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my late husband, Peter's handwriting. He had passed away 2 years ago after a long battle with cancer. We had been married for over 35 years, and although we had our ups and downs, I had loved him with all my heart. His death had left a huge hole in my life, and I had been trying to find my way in the world without him ever since. But why was there an envelope with his handwriting on it? I hadn't seen it before, and it wasn't like Peter to leave anything hidden. I had gone through every document after his passing, his will, his letters, his personal effects. Everything had been sorted, at least as far as I thought. My curiosity piqued, I reached for the envelope. My hands trembled as I slid the contents out. It was a letter, folded neatly inside. I unfolded it, and my eyes scanned the words, trying to make sense of them. Sarah, my love. If you are reading this, it means that I am no longer here. I know that we have been through so much together, and I regret that I won't be around to help you through what is about to happen. But there is something you need to know, something I should have told you long ago. It's time for the truth to come out. I've made arrangements. Things aren't what they seem. You will find what you need in the safe in the study. Don't let anyone, especially Claire, get their hands on it before you do. I trust you, Sarah. Don't let them win. With all my love, Peter. I stared at the letter in shock. My hands felt cold as I reread the words, trying to process what I had just read. Peter had made arrangements? What did he mean by that? And why did he specifically mention Claire? Why hadn't he told me about this sooner? I felt my pulse quicken as the pieces started to fall into place. The letter had clearly been written before his death, but why had it been hidden from me all this time? Was this connected to Claire's behavior today? Was there something I didn't know, something she was keeping from me? I quickly stuffed the letter into my pocket and headed for the study. The safe was in the back corner of the room, tucked away in the cabinet where Peter had always kept important documents. I hadn't needed to open it since his passing, so I wasn't entirely sure where the key was. But Peter had always been meticulous about where he kept things, and I knew I'd find it eventually. I searched through the drawers until I finally found the key to the safe tucked inside an old shoebox, exactly where I remembered Peter always keeping it. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the safe, the weight of what I was about to do hanging over me like a dark cloud. Inside, there were several folders, a few personal items, and a small, leather-bound book. It looked innocuous, but something about it caught my eye. I pulled it out, flipping through the pages, my heart pounding faster with each turn. There, in the back of the book, was a document that caught my attention. It was a codicil to Peter's will. A change he had made just before his death. I quickly skimmed through it. The words were clear and precise, but the implications were chilling. The document stated that a portion of his estate, considerable assets in real estate, investments, and a small inheritance he'd received from his parents, was to be placed in a trust. But the trust was not for me. It was for Claire. I blinked in disbelief. Claire had been named the beneficiary of a large part of Peter's estate. How could he have done this without telling me? He had always been open with me about our finances. There was a further condition in the will, one that made my stomach drop. If Sarah Palmer divorces Peter's son, Ethan, or if she no longer has a relationship with him, the inheritance would be revoked. This would only be valid if she left on her own accord. I felt dizzy. This was bigger than I could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about Claire wanting me out of the house today. This was about something far more sinister, something that had been planned long before I ever stepped foot into that house. Why had Peter done this? Why had he given Claire control of so much? And why was the will contingent on my relationship with my son? The weight of it all began to settle heavily on me, but the most pressing question still remained. What was Claire planning to do with this information? The document in my hands was like a ticking time bomb. Peter's words echoed in my mind, "Don't let anyone, especially Claire, get their hands on it before you do." What did that mean? Why had he specifically warned me about Claire? The last few hours felt like a blur, but as the pieces began to fall into place, I felt a sense of cold clarity. This wasn't just about my relationship with Claire, it was about a much larger game. And I had just walked right into it. I tucked the will back into the leather-bound book, feeling the heaviness of its contents pressing against me. The air in the study felt thick, suffocating, as if the walls were closing in around me. I needed to think, but my thoughts were racing too fast. I stood up abruptly and paced around the room, trying to clear my head. My fingers itched to reach for my phone, but I didn't want to involve Ethan just yet. He had enough on his plate, dealing with the fallout of the party and everything else. I needed answers, and I wasn't sure I was going to find them in this house. But what could I do next? I walked back out of the study, closing the door gently behind me, and went into the living room. The house felt unnaturally quiet now, empty, almost. The joyful noise from earlier was gone, replaced by a silence that seemed to echo through the halls. I walked past the family photos on the walls, the ones of Ethan and Claire on their wedding day, the ones of Emily's first steps. It felt like a lifetime ago. The betrayal I felt was not just from Claire, it was from Peter, too. I never imagined that he would have kept something like this from me, especially something so important. If he had really intended for me to be cut off from everything we'd worked so hard for, why not tell me? Why not let me know before he passed? I sat down on the couch, burying my face in my hands. I had to figure this out. But where could I even start? Then, a thought crossed my mind. I remembered the one person who might know something about this. James. James was Peter's old lawyer, and while he wasn't exactly close to the family, he had been handling Peter's legal affairs for years. If anyone could shed light on this situation, it would be him. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number, my heart pounding as I waited for the connection. The phone rang several times. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number, my heart pounding as I waited for the connection. The phone rang several times before James picked up. Hello? His voice was deep, but there was a tired edge to it, as though he'd been dealing with endless problems all day. James, it's Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to ask you something about Peter's will. There's a codicil I didn't know about, and I'm confused. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear the faint rustling of papers. Codicil, he repeated, his voice now cautious. I thought everything had been settled after Peter's passing. What's this about a codicil? I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts before speaking again. It's a change to the will, James. There's a trust set up for Claire, and it says that if I divorce Ethan or if our relationship is damaged in any way, the inheritance is revoked. I didn't know anything about it, and I'm not sure why Peter would have done this. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear James thinking carefully. Sarah, this is unusual. Peter never mentioned anything like that to me. We discussed his will in detail, and I remember there were some changes made right before he passed. But this is a different matter entirely. I suggest you come to my office tomorrow. We need to go over everything together. His words were like a hammer striking the final nail in the coffin of my peaceful life. If Peter hadn't mentioned this to his own lawyer, then what else had he kept from me? How deep did this go? I'll be there, I said quietly, the weight of the situation settling heavily on my chest. Thank you, James. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up the phone, feeling the silence of the room pressing in around me once again. I had a million questions, but I was no closer to finding the answers. The more I uncovered, the more I realized just how much I didn't know. What had Peter been thinking when he set up that trust for Claire? And why had he kept it hidden from me? There was no doubt in my mind now, Claire's behavior today wasn't a coincidence. This was part of something much bigger. As the evening wore on, I found myself pacing again, unable to sit still. I tried to call Ethan, but I couldn't bring myself to leave a message. I didn't know what to say. How could I tell him that I was being cut out of everything we had worked for, that Claire's actions weren't just a result of some petty disagreement, but were linked to something far more sinister? The night stretched on endlessly, and I barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't sit back and let this happen. I couldn't let Claire take everything, especially not when Peter's intentions were so unclear. The next morning, I made my way to James's office, my mind focused and determined. I wasn't about to let this go. I would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Claire had crossed a line, and now, I had to find out what she was really after. As I entered James's office, a sense of foreboding gripped me. The sleek, modern design of the building did little to calm my nerves. It felt like I was stepping into a different world, one where the stakes were much higher than I had anticipated. I had come here to seek clarity, but I feared I might leave with even more questions. James's assistant greeted me and led me into his office, where he was already waiting behind his desk, a stack of papers in front of him. He looked up as I entered, his expression unreadable. I sat down, not bothering with pleasantries. There was no time for small talk now. Sarah, I'm glad you could make it, James said, but his voice lacked its usual warmth. There was a wariness about him now, something that made me uneasy. I've gone through Peter's papers. There are some things I didn't realize were there either. I nodded, my stomach twisting. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. James, what exactly is going on? Why would Peter leave Claire the majority of the inheritance? And why would he put such a strange clause in the will? I don't understand. James sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair. He didn't meet my eyes for a moment, instead staring at the papers in front of him. Sarah, I've been going over Peter's records for a long time. He had always been meticulous about his estate planning. But what you're telling me, it doesn't add up. The codicil, the trust, it's not just about money. There's more to this. I leaned forward, desperate for clarity. What do you mean? What's more to it? James looked up at me then, his eyes narrowing. Peter was concerned. Very concerned, actually. But it wasn't about money. It was about something else, something personal. He paused, as if weighing whether or not to continue. Peter and Claire had a history. There were things you didn't know about. Things he never shared with you. My heart skipped a beat. A history? I repeated, struggling to understand. What kind of history? James shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. It's not something I've ever discussed with you before, but... Peter was afraid. Afraid that Claire might one day turn on you, manipulate the situation, and use his wealth as leverage. He didn't want to leave you vulnerable, Sarah. He wanted to make sure that if something ever happened, you wouldn't be left with nothing. I was stunned into silence. But, why would Claire do that? I whispered, though I already had an inkling. Claire's recent behavior, her coldness, her demand that I leave, it all started to make a horrible kind of sense. But still, I didn't want to believe it. I had always tried to keep the peace between us. James continued, his voice low. Peter suspected that Claire would eventually try to cut you out. She was always distant, always trying to distance herself from you. But the will, the trust, it wasn't about money, Sarah. It was a safety net. A precaution. I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything he was saying. So you're telling me Peter set this up because he was afraid Claire would try to take everything? James nodded slowly. Exactly. But Sarah, there's more. Claire had no idea Peter had put these safeguards in place. He had his reasons, and they weren't just based on money or jealousy. Peter had caught wind of things happening behind the scenes, things that he couldn't prove at the time, but he knew enough to be wary. I felt my chest tighten. What things? What are you talking about, James? He hesitated before speaking again, his gaze darting to the stack of papers in front of him. Peter had reason to believe that Claire was trying to take control of the family's assets long before his passing. She made some moves. And I'm not sure if you were ever aware of this, but there were a few legal maneuvers she was making under the radar. Documents, signatures, things that were questionable. I could feel the blood drain from my face as I absorbed his words. I had always trusted Claire, believed that she was part of our family. But now, everything seemed like a lie. She had been planning this for a long time, hadn't she? And Peter, I whispered, he knew all along. James nodded gravely. He did. He was trying to protect you from her. That's why the trust was set up the way it was. If you were to separate from Ethan or if there was a falling out, it would trigger the clause, protecting you financially. It was his way of making sure Claire couldn't strip you of everything in the event of a crisis. But she's already trying to push me out, I said, my voice shaking with the weight of it all. Today she kicked me out of her house, on Emily's birthday, of all days. It's like she's been waiting for the moment to get rid of me. James looked at me with sympathy. That's what Peter feared. But Sarah, you have to understand, Claire doesn't know about the trust. She doesn't know Peter set this up. It's still a secret, and you need to keep it that way. I nodded numbly, trying to steady my racing thoughts. I had been thrown out, humiliated in front of everyone, but now I understood why. Claire was trying to remove me from the picture, just as Peter had feared. She had been planning it all along. James, I said, my voice firming, what do I do now? How do I protect myself? And what about Ethan? James leaned forward, locking eyes with me. You need to keep this secret, Sarah. Claire can't find out about the trust. If she does, she'll stop at nothing to manipulate the situation, and you'll lose everything Peter wanted to protect. As for Ethan, he doesn't know what Claire is really up to. You'll need to make him see the truth, but be careful. Claire is already playing her game, and she's good at it. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling in. So, this is a game now? James didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gave me a look that said it all. It's more than a game, Sarah. It's a battle. And right now, you have the upper hand. But you need to be smart. I left James's office feeling like I had entered a new world, one where the stakes were far higher than I had ever imagined. Claire wasn't just a cold daughter-in-law anymore, she was a schemer, someone who had been playing me all along. But Peter had left me with a weapon, something she didn't know about. Now, I had to figure out how to use it before she did. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the coffee cup in front of me, the steam rising in the stillness of the house. I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about the trust, about Peter's intentions, about Claire's quiet yet growing sense of entitlement. She had made her move already, kicking me out of the house, humiliating me on Emily's birthday, and creating a divide where there had been none. But what was next? What was Claire planning? I needed to figure that out, and quickly. I picked up the phone and dialed Ethan's number. My hand was steady, but my stomach churned. I hadn't spoken to him since the party. I hadn't even received a text back, despite my message telling him that something had gone horribly wrong. It was like he'd vanished off the radar. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before he finally picked up. Mom? Ethan's voice was distant, strained. He sounded exhausted, and for a moment, I wondered if he'd been speaking to Claire. I'm sorry about what happened. I didn't know. Claire, she's been upset for a while, but I never thought she would. Ethan, I interrupted, my voice sharp but calm. What happened at the party yesterday? Your wife, she kicked me out. In front of everyone. She humiliated me, and I don't understand why. This isn't just a misunderstanding, is it? There's something going on here, something bigger. There was a long silence on the other end, and I could almost hear him trying to gather his thoughts. I don't know what to say, Mom. She's been under a lot of stress. Maybe it was a mistake. I'll talk to her. But I really don't understand what's going on either. I thought everything was fine between you two. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of frustration wash over me. Ethan, as always, was trying to smooth things over, to play the peacemaker. He couldn't see what was happening right in front of him. He didn't know about the will, the trust, the lengths Claire had gone to in order to position herself as the one in control. Ethan, this isn't just a petty argument. Claire's been planning something for a long time. Peter knew about it, and he set up safeguards to protect me, if something were to happen between me and you. He even put it in the will, Ethan. He put it in the will. The line went deathly silent. What do you mean? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. I could either tell him everything or hold back, but I couldn't afford to let him remain ignorant. Not anymore. Peter set up a trust. For Claire. And for me. But there's a clause in the will, if I'm ever cut off from you, if we separate or if our relationship breaks down, she gets the inheritance. She gets everything. It's all in the codicil, and I only found out about it recently. Peter was trying to protect me. But now, Claire's making her move, and I'm not sure if you understand what's really going on. The silence on the other end stretched on for so long that I began to wonder if the call had dropped. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice tinged with disbelief. I didn't know about any of this. Peter never told me. Why would he do that? Why would he put it all on Claire? I don't. I don't know what to believe right now. You have to trust me, Ethan, I said, my voice pleading. You need to see what Claire is doing. She's been pushing me out, and I think it's because of the money. She's trying to get everything, and I'm the obstacle in her way. You have to wake up, son. She's playing you. I don't know what to do, Ethan replied, his voice cracking. Claire, she's been so distant lately. And now this. I don't know if I can believe you, Mom. She's always been there for me, for us. This doesn't make sense. I wanted to scream, to shake him out of his denial, but I knew that wasn't going to help. Ethan needed time to process this, but I also knew I couldn't just wait around for him to come to his senses. Claire was already moving, and I had to be one step ahead of her. I'm not asking you to believe me right now, Ethan. I'm asking you to see what's really happening. You don't want to lose everything because of her lies, do you? There was another long pause, and for a moment, I thought the conversation was over. But then, Ethan spoke again, quieter this time. I'll talk to her. I don't know how, but I will. I need to figure this out, for Emily's sake. I'll get back to you. Please, just give me some time. I felt a flicker of hope, but it was faint. All right, son. Just be careful. Claire's not the woman you think she is. As I hung up the phone, I felt the weight of the conversation settling in. Ethan was still on the fence, still caught between his loyalty to Claire and the reality I was trying to show him. But that was all I could do for now. He had to make his own choice, and that choice would determine everything. But I couldn't wait for him to make up his mind. Claire was already playing her cards, and I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. I spent the rest of the day in my own home, trying to gather my thoughts and figure out my next move. My mind kept returning to the trust, to the clause in the will, and to the one question I couldn't shake: what exactly was Claire planning? I needed to get answers, and fast. The following afternoon, I drove back to Ethan and Claire's house. This time, I wasn't going to let Claire dictate the terms. I would confront her, find out exactly what she was planning, and take control of my own future. I arrived just before dinner, the house eerily quiet. There were no cars in the driveway, which meant they were either out or hiding inside. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. When Claire opened it, her eyes widened in surprise. Sarah, she said, almost coldly. What are you doing here? I stood tall, forcing a calm I didn't feel. We need to talk, Claire. Now. I could tell she was surprised to see me standing on her doorstep. After the way she had kicked me out just days earlier, I wasn't sure what kind of reception I'd get, but I was determined to face her head on. There was too much at stake now. If I was going to protect myself, my son, and my family, I had to confront Claire. I couldn't let her destroy everything Peter and I had built. Claire raised an eyebrow, her arms folding across her chest in an almost defensive manner. What are you doing here, Sarah? She asked, her tone flat but with a hint of underlying irritation. I thought I made it clear that you're not welcome. I stood my ground, refusing to let her intimidate me. I'm not here to argue, Claire. I'm here to talk. And we need to talk about the trust Peter set up. Her face instantly tightened, her eyes flashing with something I couldn't quite identify. The calmness that had been there a moment before vanished. She opened the door wider, inviting me in, but the air in the house felt charged. I could sense the layers of tension between us, and I knew that the conversation ahead would not be an easy one. As I stepped inside, the silence was deafening. The house felt different, more oppressive, as though the walls themselves were closing in. I followed Claire into the living room, my eyes scanning the room. Everything seemed so normal, furniture in its place, pictures on the walls, the faint smell of something cooking in the kitchen, but beneath it all, something was terribly wrong. Claire gestured to the couch, but I didn't sit. I was here to confront her, not to sit back and let her take control. I remained standing, looking down at her as she took a seat. She didn't meet my gaze right away, and for a split second, I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Fear? Guilt? Whatever it was quickly replaced by the familiar mask of indifference. I know what you're trying to do, I said, cutting through the silence. And I'm not going to let you get away with it. She finally looked up at me, her expression hardening. I don't know what you think you know, Sarah, but you're mistaken. I haven't done anything wrong. Stop pretending, Claire, I said, my voice steady but laced with a controlled anger. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Peter left a trust. For you. For me. And you've been working behind the scenes to take everything for yourself. Her lips parted in a barely perceptible gasp, but she quickly regained composure. What trust are you talking about? You're just making things up, Sarah. I pulled out the letter that Peter had written for me, the one that contained the warnings, the one that had set everything in motion. I didn't wave it in front of her, but I held it firmly in my hand, letting her know that I knew the truth. Peter set up a trust, Claire. A trust that would kick in if anything happened to our relationship. He knew something was off with you. He knew you were planning something. I paused for a moment, watching her closely, hoping to see something, anything, that would give me a clue to her next move. You've been plotting, haven't you? Planning to take everything for yourself, no matter the cost. And you thought you could get away with it. Claire's face twitched slightly, but she didn't flinch. She sat back in her chair, crossing her legs, and for a moment, I wondered if she was trying to keep her composure or if she was waiting for the right moment to strike. But then she spoke, her voice cold and calculated. You have no idea what you're talking about, Sarah. Peter didn't leave you anything. I'm the one who's been here, taking care of Ethan and Emily all these years. I'm the one who's worked to make this family what it is. And you? You've always been in the way. I felt a wave of disbelief, a sharp pang of betrayal. In the way? Claire, I've supported you. I've helped you, always. And this is how you repay me? By trying to take everything that was never yours to begin with? She laughed, but it wasn't a genuine laugh. It was sharp, cruel, like the sound of a knife being drawn. You're so naive, Sarah. Do you really think Peter cared about you? He was weak. He couldn't even protect his own family. I'm the one who's been here, holding everything together. If it wasn't for me, you would have nothing. The words stung more than I wanted to admit, but I couldn't let her see how much it hurt. She wanted to provoke me, to break me, but I couldn't afford to show weakness now. I'm not here to fight you, Claire, I said, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling up inside me. I'm here to take control of my life again. You've been scheming for years, but now you've crossed a line. I'm not going to let you push me out of my own family, out of my son's life, just because you think you're entitled to everything. You'll never win this fight. For a moment, she seemed to freeze. Her eyes narrowed as she processed what I had just said. But then she leaned forward, her voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. You think you have the upper hand, don't you? You think because you found Peter's letter and you know about the trust, you've won. But you haven't. You'll never win. I've already secured everything I need. The trust, the will, it's all in my hands now. And if you think Ethan will believe you over me, you're wrong. I've already made sure he'll side with me. He'll never take your side. The cold reality of her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Claire had been playing a much deeper game than I had ever realized. She hadn't just been trying to isolate me from my family, she had been carefully maneuvering to make sure that when the time came, she'd be the one in control. You're wrong, I said, my voice sharper now, but still under control. Ethan will see the truth. And I'll make sure of it. Claire smirked. Good luck with that. You can't prove anything. Not without exposing your own weakness. And once Ethan knows the truth, once he knows how much you've been holding on to all these years, he won't trust you. He'll leave you behind, just like Peter did. Her words were meant to tear me apart, but they only made me more resolute. I knew this wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about my family, my legacy, and Claire's insidious plot to take it all from me. But she underestimated me. Peter had set things in motion, and I wasn't going to let her destroy everything. I won't give up, I said, standing up straight, feeling the power of my words. And I'll make sure you never take what's rightfully mine. For the first time, Claire's composure cracked. Her eyes flashed with a brief look of panic, but she quickly masked it with a tight smile. You'll regret this, Sarah. You don't know what you're getting into. I think I know exactly what I'm getting into, I said, my voice unwavering. And I won't back down. The house felt empty without Ethan's reassuring presence. He had promised to talk to Claire, but every day that passed without any word from him made me more anxious. I had always been close to my son, but now, it felt as though there was a growing divide between us. Claire had managed to twist everything, to make herself the victim in all of this. It was infuriating to watch from the sidelines, but I knew better than to force Ethan's hand. He had to come to his own conclusions. It was early one morning when I received a message from Ethan. My heart skipped a beat as I opened the text. Can we meet? I think I need to hear your side of the story. I'm not sure what to believe anymore. I quickly typed out a response. Of course. I'll meet you whenever you're ready. The relief I felt was immediate, but I also knew that this was the moment of truth. I had to make Ethan understand. I had to make him see the truth of Claire's intentions, and I had to do it without pushing him too hard. I didn't want to lose him, but I couldn't stand by and watch as Claire tore our family apart. We agreed to meet at a cafe near my house. It wasn't the most private place, but it was neutral ground, and I knew that Ethan would be more comfortable there than in one of our homes. When I arrived, I found him sitting in the corner booth, looking weary and burdened. His eyes met mine as I approached, and for a moment, I could see the conflict written all over his face. Mom, he said, his voice heavy. I don't know where to start. Claire's been telling me a lot of things, and I don't know what's true anymore. I sat down across from him, my hands resting on the table, trying to keep my composure. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, but I knew that the next few words I said could change everything. Ethan, I began softly, I know it's been hard. Claire's been manipulating you, making you believe that I'm the one causing all the problems. But I'm not. She's been planning this for a long time. The trust, the will, she's been using them to position herself as the rightful beneficiary of everything. He looked at me, his brow furrowing in confusion. But, why would she do that? Why would she go behind my back? We've built a life together, Mom. Why would she destroy everything? Because she wants control, Ethan, I said, my voice steady but tinged with emotion. She's always wanted to control everything. And now she's trying to cut me out of our family. She doesn't care about you or Emily the way she says she does. She cares about the money, the power, and the legacy. Ethan shook his head, clearly torn. I don't know, Mom. I just don't understand. She's been with me for so long. We've been through so much together. I don't know how to reconcile what you're telling me with everything I've seen. Claire's never given me any reason to doubt her before. I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. Ethan, I know this is hard. You've always seen her through rose-colored glasses, and that's not your fault. But Claire's not who you think she is. She's been playing a game with all of us. And now, she's trying to take everything Peter and I worked for. She's trying to take everything from you, too. His eyes welled up, and I could see the weight of his internal struggle on his face. But how do I know you're telling the truth? How can I trust that what you're saying is real? I have proof, I said, my voice firm now, as I pulled the letter Peter had written for me from my bag. Peter knew about Claire's plans. He knew what she was capable of, and he set up the trust to protect me. He wrote this letter for me before he passed. He knew you wouldn't understand, and he knew Claire would try to turn us all against each other. But he left it to me to make sure you saw the truth. Ethan took the letter from me slowly, his hands shaking as he read the words. I watched his face carefully as he processed what Peter had written, as the reality of the situation sank in. It was as though a veil had been lifted from his eyes, and he was finally seeing Claire for who she really was. For several long moments, Ethan didn't say anything. The weight of the letter was heavy in his hands, and I could see the fight within him. Finally, he looked up at me, his face pale but resolute. "Claire's been lying to me," he said quietly, his voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and anger. "She's been using me. All this time, I thought she had my back, that she was looking out for us. But she wasn't. She's been planning this behind my back, manipulating me, and I didn't see it." I nodded, my heart aching for him. "Ethan, I didn't want to be the one to tell you all of this, but I couldn't stand by and let her tear us apart. You're my son, and I'll always fight for you, even if it means going up against someone I thought I could trust." He stared at the letter again, his thoughts clearly racing. "But why didn't you say something sooner? Why didn't you tell me this from the start?" "I didn't want to hurt you," I said softly, my voice breaking slightly. "I thought I could handle it. But when she kicked me out of the house, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to protect us, Ethan. You and Emily deserve the truth." Ethan's hands trembled as he placed the letter down on the table. "I don't know what to do now. I don't know how to fix this. But I do know one thing. I can't let her get away with this." I could see the fire in his eyes now, the fire of someone who had been deceived, someone who was ready to fight for what was right. "We're going to take this to the lawyer, Ethan. We'll make sure she never gets her hands on everything Peter left. And we'll make sure she's held accountable for everything she's done." Ethan nodded slowly, his gaze hardening. "I'm going to confront her, Mom. And I'm going to make sure she knows that she's not going to get away with this." The tension in the air shifted, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of hope rising in me. Ethan had seen the truth. Now, we had a chance to set things right. As I stood up to leave, Ethan reached out and grabbed my hand. "Thank you, Mom. For everything." I smiled, my heart full of relief. "We're family, Ethan. I'll always fight for you." The confrontation with Claire had been inevitable. After all the lies, the manipulation, the years of subtle deceit, it had finally come down to this. There was no turning back now. The truth was out, and the consequences were unfolding before me, but I didn't expect the showdown to be as dramatic, or as final, as it turned out to be. It was the following afternoon when Ethan and I decided to take action. We couldn't afford to let Claire get away with everything. We had the truth, we had the proof, and now we needed to act before Claire could twist it all back in her favor. Ethan had arranged for us to meet at their house, where Claire had been holed up for the past couple of days. I knew she was expecting a confrontation. After all, she had been the one to play the game so ruthlessly, but what she hadn't expected was Ethan to finally see through her facade. As we pulled up to the house, I could see Claire's car parked in the driveway. The house looked the same as it always had, deceptively calm, deceptively perfect, but I knew better now. Behind those walls, Claire was a completely different person, and it was time for her to face the truth. Ethan and I walked up to the door together, the tension between us palpable. As we stepped inside, the atmosphere felt charged, heavy with anticipation. Claire was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine, her expression unreadable. But when she saw us standing in the doorway, her eyes narrowed, and she set the magazine down with a deliberate slowness. Well, she said, her voice sharp. "What do we have here? You two finally figured it out, huh?" Ethan didn't answer right away, but I could see the storm brewing inside him. He had always been calm, collected, but today there was an edge to him that I had never seen before. He stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Claire, we need to talk," he said, his voice steady but full of determination. "You've been lying to me for far too long." Claire smirked, as if the whole situation amused her. "Lying? What are you talking about? I've done everything for you, Ethan. Everything. And this is how you repay me? By siding with your mother?" I could see the anger rising in Ethan's eyes, but he held his ground. "No, Claire. I'm siding with the truth. I'm siding with what's right. You've been using me, manipulating me, and I won't stand for it anymore. Claire stood up, her posture rigid. Manipulating you? I've given you everything. I've helped you build this life, this family. And this is how you repay me? You're going to let your mother turn you against me? Ethan shook his head. I didn't let anyone turn me against you. The truth turned me against you. You've been lying to me about everything. About the trust, about Peter's will, about what you've been doing behind my back. At the mention of the trust, Claire's face went pale. Her eyes flashed with panic, but she quickly masked it, her usual confidence returning. This is ridiculous. There's no trust, Ethan. No will. You've been fed lies, and you're listening to your mother, who's only here to tear us apart. I stepped forward, pulling out the letter Peter had written to me, the one that had set everything in motion. This is the truth, Claire, I said, my voice steady. Peter knew what you were planning. He left us both a safeguard. And now, you're going to have to face the consequences of what you've done. Claire's eyes flicked down to the letter, then back to us, and for a split second, I saw the crack in her armor. The mask of calm she had been wearing slipped, just for a moment, revealing the fear and panic beneath. But she recovered quickly, her voice cold and calculating once again. You think you've won, don't you? She sneered. You think you've exposed me, but you're wrong. You're not going to take everything from me. You're not going to take what's rightfully mine. Ethan stepped closer, his voice now firm and resolute. It's not yours, Claire. None of it was ever yours. You've been lying to me, lying to everyone. And now, you're going to have to answer for it. Claire's eyes flared with rage, but before she could say anything more, I spoke up. Ethan and I are going to the lawyer, Claire. We're going to make sure this trust is enforced. We're going to make sure you don't take what isn't yours. And you're going to have to face the consequences for everything you've done. For a long moment, Claire didn't speak. The room was silent, the tension between us thick. Then, as if she had finally realized the full extent of what she was facing, she slumped back into her chair, defeated. Her shoulders sagged, and she let out a shaky breath. You think you can just take everything from me, she whispered, her voice a mere shadow of the confidence it had held before. You think I'll just let you walk away with everything? I'm not here to take anything from you, Claire, Ethan said, his voice softening just slightly. I'm here to make sure you don't take everything from me. From our family. Claire looked up at him, her face twisted in something between anger and sorrow. You'll regret this, she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. You'll regret ever turning your back on me. But Ethan didn't flinch. I already regret trusting you. With those words, the last of her defenses crumbled. Claire had no more lies to tell, no more manipulation left to use. The truth had finally caught up with her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The finality of the moment was palpable. As Ethan and I turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with an overwhelming sadness. I had fought for my family, for my place in it, but I couldn't help but mourn the woman I had once believed was part of it. The truth had set us free, but at what cost? As we stepped outside, the sun was setting on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape. I looked at Ethan, and for the first time in days, I saw a sense of peace in his eyes. He had made his choice. And together, we were going to rebuild what had been broken. Thank you, Mom, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for never giving up on me. I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. I'll always fight for you, Ethan. Always. And as we walked away from Claire's house, I knew that we had won. Not just the inheritance, not just the trust, but the right to move forward as a family, stronger than ever before. Epilogue. In the weeks that followed, Claire's grip on the family unraveled. With the truth exposed, her web of lies and manipulation fell apart. Ethan and I worked together to ensure that Peter's wishes were honored, and Claire was held accountable for her actions. She eventually left, choosing to distance herself from the family she had tried to destroy. Though I still mourned the loss of the person I had once believed her to be, I was at peace knowing that we could finally heal. The trust Peter had set up was more than just a legal safeguard, it was a reminder that truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds a way to the surface.